Anderson, who is a voice actor, and we're just going to sit here and ask you a couple questions about your convention experiences and some of the things you've done.
Okay.
So I guess my first question would be, what was the first convention you ever attended?
Anime Weekend Atlanta.
Anime Weekend Atlanta.
Back in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
Starblazers, for those who may not be aware, we did it 30 years ago. This is our 30th anniversary year, and we are very proud of that. And for the longest time, nobody knew who we were.
Mm-hmm.
Our names were not in the credits. It was a very small project. It was actually the only show of its kind being done in the country at that time. It wasn't called anime, or there were no Netflix or Blockbuster Video, or VCRs were about $1,000 a piece. It was a whole different world back then. And as I said, our names were not in the credits, and nobody knew who we were. And it wasn't until many, 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 many years later that my brother-in-law at the time and my two lovely nieces were kind of sitting around watching TV one day and talking, and my brother-in-law said, you know what? And my nieces were at the time fans of Ray Earth and Sailor Moon and the more current shows of the time. And they got kind of talking, yeah, Aunt Amy did this show. Let's see what we can find about it on the internet. Well, the next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call. You are not going to believe what I just found on the internet. And at the time I was using kind of an older machine. I had a 2400 baud modem. Okay, it was not the slickest thing to get online with. So and then it crashed. I started looking at these websites and I thought, oh my God. And then my computer crashed and I was kind of a fish out of water. But finally, about 6 months later, I was able to afford a new machine. And, I started looking at these websites and I thought, well, let me send out an email or two. Mm-hmm. So I found the Wave Motion webpage, which, run by a real nice fellow named Bud Cox. And, I sent an email to him also, just kind of introducing myself. And, the show is very special to me, and I thought it was gone forever, and now I'm finding the websites and stuff, and told him who I was and what I did. He sent my email to a couple of other people, and they sent it to a couple of other people, and all of a sudden I was getting replies back, and boy, don't you know, they were asking some tough questions because they were not willing to accept any substitutes, and it has just grown steadily over the years. These people who are now good friends of mine, at the time they were on a mailing list, and everybody got copies of my email, and oh my God! And it just sort of appeared out of nowhere, and they wanted to make sure I was the real deal, and we had some real good phone conversations and things like that, and they suggested that I contact a real good friend named Dave Merrill, Dave Merrill, who at the time was the convention chair for Anime Weekend Atlanta, and who also was good friends of the dear fellow who is now my husband, and was best man at our wedding, and I can tell you stories. But anyway, they suggested that they told me all about conventions and stuff, and I'm thinking, oh my God,
yeah,
that was just freaky, just freaky.
And did it exceed completely, change your expectations when you got there, or what was it like?
I'll tell you the truth, I don't remember a whole lot of that first con. Because I was walking around just kind of, and I'm seeing people in costumes and, panels and people wanting my autograph and stuff after about 16 years of nothing. The only clue, I had a slight clue that Starblazers was not entirely dead. I got a catalog. This was early 90s, as I recall. There was a catalog of VHS tapes. You look through it, you find, you see your favorite show, and you order the videotapes. And I'm flipping through, and I thought, it can't be the one we did. So I could, at the time, I was, I had a house to fix up, and I had all sort of homeowner expenses, and I couldn't really afford to buy a whole lot of videotapes, so I bought 3 of them. And it was, in fact, the dub that we did.
Wow. Blast from the past sort of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, to this day, My husband and I, his name is Dave.
Mm-hmm.
We are about to celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary. We met. I was the first AWA that I did was in '97, and then I met him the following year. He was in charge of the green room at the AnimeCon, and we met that year, and then we were married 2 years later. And Starblazers literally brought us together. He watched it when he was 10. So and at every con we go to, we meet more and more people who tell us the most wonderful stories. I'd pile on the couch with the kids, and one fellow who has since become a good friend of ours, he would make up different lyrics to the theme song. He'd be there, the kids are all waiting to see the show and stuff, and he'd sing things like, heading off to Iskandar, driving in our brand new car, and they turn up, Dad, that's not how it goes, and he'd get a lecture from his kids, and I just to this day, we hear about kids who used to run home from school. So they'd be sure to catch the first few notes of the theme song. I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'd be late to school because I had to see the end of the episode and all that. So it's a special show to people, and I'm meeting the grandchildren these days of the people who used to watch it as high school students or college students, and that's just I don't know. I've never had an experience like this in my life, and I know I never will again. So it is so precious to me. Yeah. It really is.
It's been worth every moment.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned you've been to Anime Week in Atlanta. And
we go every year.
Oh, great. I'll see you down there.
Oh, great.
And we're out here right now at Otakon in Baltimore. Is there any convention you'd like to go, or any city you'd like to see a convention in?
Well, actually, there are, each year it seems there's one new one. We find ourselves going to a new place, and we're now we attend a convention in Michigan every year called JFAX, and we did come to Otakon several years ago, and it's sort of we're getting back to places we have been, and next March actually we're going to be going to Seattle to a great big event called Emerald City Comic Con, and I'm so happy to be able to tell you that not only will I be there, but Ken Meserol, who did Wildstar, Leader Deslock, Eddie Allen, who did his voice, and Tom Tweedy, who did Mark Venture's voice.
Oh, wow.
The four of us are going to be there. For the first time in 30 years, the four of us are all going to be together.
Oh, wow.
In the same room.
That's great.
Yeah. It's so awesome, because when we did the show, forgive me if I'm jumping the gun
no problem.
question-wise, but when we did the show, when you're dubbing, particularly from one language to another, the most economical way of doing it is for everybody to go in with their script alone into the booth. And even to this day, it still works out the best to do it that way. So the upside is we were able to do 2 or 3 episodes at a session, but the downside was that we didn't always see the people that we were our fellow cast members. So which makes it kind of tough these days. Thank God for the internet, because we are able to get email from people out in Los Angeles or whatever, and I bumped into Ken Meserol the other day at a session, and he told me he was Wildstar, and and through slowly but surely we're starting to get back in touch with all the other cast members, hopefully all, but at least 4 of us now are actually, we've had our pictures taken and everything.
So you're all... It must be amazing, after all that time to come back together.
It is, because, nowadays, it's customary, everybody gets their name in the credits, everybody's got websites, and, somebody does a new show, it's all over the world the next day.
Yeah.
All the information and everything. And, so fans have a way to get in touch with them and things like that. So I'm just eating this up with a spoon, because it was, for so long, as I said, we had no idea, because they didn't know where to find us.
Yeah.
There was a 3rd season of Starblazers that at the time when we finished the 2nd season, The Comet Empire, the 3rd season, The Bowler Wars, had not yet even been produced in Japan yet. So, if we had known, believe you me, if we had known there was going to be a 3rd season coming out in 3 or 4 years, you know, we would have been camping out on the casting director's doorstep. So yeah. But you know, we're meeting everywhere we go. People just have, there's no other way to describe it. They just have that look on their face, and they're sincere. And you know, people that tell me, "Oh man, I fell in love with Nova when I was 9 or whatever." I know it's genuine and it's a sincere, you know, a thoughtful thing, and it's not anything sordid or anything like that. And I look at people like that, and I say, well, you were obviously a young man of taste and discrimination. You know, and I hear things like role model. She was my role model, and she was a confident character. You know, the relationships that the characters had, they were real. And you know, there was sadness when Captain Avatar, the episode where he died, you know, and things like that, and you know, he didn't just magically, you know, heal up and appear in the next episode and things like that. So it meant a lot to people, you know. And I hear things that, you know, my folks were divorced, and this show was really comforting to me. It was like a reliable, like a friend. Yeah. You know, and it helped me through a hard time and things like that.
I've met a lot of people over the years that have said, you know, they were going through whatever rough time in their life, and they just found some series, and it has that special place in the heart because it's just something that they needed to grab onto.
Absolutely.
And they found it. So you mentioned a bunch of these stories of these things that the fans tell you. What are some of the questions you like to get, like whenever you have a panel or something?
There was one, I forget where we were, but one of the fans asked what else we like to do. Or where was voice acting your original career choice, and things like that. Something a little bit outside of the voice acting industry. And actually, my first sort of what I was first thinking of doing as a career was being a flight attendant, because that's what my dad used to do. And you know, one thing led to another, and I went to high school and started performing in the annual shows and stuff, and I like this applause stuff. You know, this is cool. I like this. So I kind of, you know, it's referred to as being bit by the acting bug.
Yeah.
But so I went to school for a couple of years in New York, and this was back in late 70s. I graduated high school in 73, and then graduated from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City in 75. And that was, awesome theater training. We learned fencing and dance and voice lessons and stuff like that. And I really felt the need to get an idea of things like how does a casting session work, and what do casting directors do, and that kind of thing. So I started looking for work in related parts of the industry, and I did get hired as a receptionist at a casting agency, and I worked for a fellow who wrote jingles for radio and TV spots and that kind of thing. So I was learning kind of the business of show business. Yeah. And it was in early 1979 when I was working working part-time in an acting school called West Barron, also in New York, which is more film technique, television technique, and radio, and they had a voiceover class and things like that. But that's where I was working when Starblazers came along, because the casting director was calling the school and other resources to look for non-union talent to come and audition. They didn't want big name stars that were going to demand a whole lot of money and that kind of thing. And because it was, as I said, it was a very small project. Nobody knew if it was going to fly. There had been some successes, like Speed Racer was very big, and Astro Boy, and there were a couple of other shows ahead of Starblazers. But when it came along, it was still the only one that was being done at the time. And so they didn't know if people were going to love it, hate it. They didn't know what the result was going to be. So they didn't really, it was a risk. It was a financial risk. So they wanted to keep the budget in check and just see if they could turn out a good product. And as it turns out, it worked. They didn't want a whole lot of really cartoony type voices. So they just told us, use your regular voice. Use your regular voice and just, we'll see what happens and see how people like it.
Great. So
Yeah.
you've been to a bunch of conventions. Is there anything you've seen that you wish more conventions would do, like any practices?
It's actually happening. There's been a lot more family-oriented content. I mean, we see kids in strollers being pushed around. You know, and here comes the next generation of anime fans, and there's more and more programming. You know, because a lot of times it looks like they're just kind of, the parents are all excited about seeing their favorite show or meeting their favorite voice artist or whatever, and the kids are kind of just, okay, Mom, can we go home now? But the cons are starting to run, more stuff for kids and really include them.
Make the event for literally all ages.
Yeah, because Starblazers, it's not the only show that is okay for the kids to watch, and now there's more and more of it being produced. But for the long time, it was the only one. And it's sort of what I've been hoping would happen is actually coming to pass. Yeah. And that's really nice.
So, we're talking just all ages, and you obviously were worked on one of the earliest things that got a lot of people into Japanese animation and everything. Do you have any advice you would want to give a fan who's getting older, things to remember? Some people are a little shy to even put that little Totoro figure or something in their cubicle or something. Yeah. Would you have any advice for people like that?
Well, you know what? Everybody's going to find something. Whether you're a football fan or an anime fan or whatever, just I always say live and let live. Everybody has a passion. Everybody likes their little Totoro or their little a lot of people have the ship from Starblazers, the Yamato. We renamed it the Argo, but they have it in their cubicle or whatever. You know what? Life is too short. Everybody just be happy and let everybody else be happy too.
That's great. That's great advice.
That's the way I like to live. So that's what I always suggest too.
Do you have a favorite convention memory at all?
There are too many. There are too many, and I'm pleased to be able to say that. A lot of things I hear over and over again. I ran home from school, and that kind. I will never get tired of hearing that. Never. I eat it up. I eat it up.
So I guess just to wind things down here, what are you currently involved with right now?
I'm doing audiobooks. I have a home studio, and my husband and I formed a little company. We call it, you hear about studio whatever, in the animation industry and so forth. And I called my company Studio Voice. And voice is an acronym. It means vocal originality incorporating categorical ethicality. Wow. In a nutshell, I do what I consider to be really, really valuable, good stories that I don't feel ashamed for anybody to listen to. I do kids' books, murder mysteries. I don't do anything adult. I think we all know what I'm talking about. I do what I refer to as, or what is referred to as age appropriate. You wouldn't hand a kid a murder mystery to listen to. Because, where we live in Virginia, there is no animation production at all. And you really do, for those who may be interested in pursuing it as a career, you really have to live where it's done. What I do not want to advise is that you go home and pack your stuff and move to New York or LA or whatever and hope, head for the bright lights of the big city. No, start from where you are. Where we live, here again, there's no animation production. So I wanted to keep my name, stay, keep my skills sharp and keep my career going. So I found other things to do. So, I set up a studio, and which is nothing more technology these days. It's a computer and a microphone and a preamp and some monitors, and that's it. And you don't have to spend a fortune to have a decent studio. And so I'm kind of building an audiobook career, taking a little different direction for the voice work that I do.
Is anything else you'd like to mention or should shout out to some of our viewers on the podcast?
We just want everybody to know how special Starblazers is to us as well. It was not just a job, although it was my first professional acting job, it was not just a job. We wanted this to be good. We were hungry, and we cared about it, and we still do. And I'm so, so glad that, although I've done a couple of conventions with Mark Venture, Tom Tweedy, and Ken Mazzarella, who did Wildstar. I did, Eddie Allen and Ken and I just did a convention in March in New York. So we were able to get together, and they are just now getting really into the convention, to the convention circuit and things like that. And they're really finding out how important it is. It's not just a bunch of crazed, fanboys and fangirls who really don't care about the voice artists. Our fans care about us, and that we will never ever take that for granted, ever.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dad.
Thank you for sitting.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
You too.